Hi, it's Pastor Andy again, and I'm going to try to do something in a short amount of time today that I'm not certain I can do. So we'll just see how this goes. But one of the questions, as we've been going through this series, really, I guess we virtually completed our series yesterday on the Apostles' Creed. But as we've been going through that this uh, winter and spring, one of the questions we've had a few questions come up, and one of those questions has been about the statement that is in the midst of that. That I believe that's the premise of the whole thing. I believe in the, but I believe in the Holy Catholic Church. And a question that I received last week was, um, do we believe in the Catholic Church? Well, there's just so much to that. I need to back off and start with the word church. The word church means a gathering of people. It's the Greek word ekklesia, meaning called out ones, people that are called out. Specifically, it was when like a letter arrived and the townsfolk would be called out to hear the letter or something like that. In the Old Testament, it's the similar word to the assembly, that the entire assembly of Israel gathered. So in a sense, the church is very visible, and by that I mean that you can see the people. Of course, we know that we say I go to church, but really the church is the people, and so we can see people. But there is also the invisible nature of the church, and we see this in the letters that are written, especially in the New Testament. Well, obviously, the letters are in the New Testament, but especially letters that are talking that are written to the church. For instance, Paul begins many of his letters in the first couple of verses with something like to the saints of the church of X, Philippi, Ephesus, etc. And what he means by that is that the real church, the true church, is not those who go to a church, who go to a building, or who gather together, although that's a part of it. The real church is the spiritual church, those who are the saints. And that word saints, the word that we translate as saints, means holy or holy ones. And so, really, there is an invisible church, because in churches all over this world, there are people who attend church who are not a part of the church. And what I mean by that is that there are people who go to church faithfully. Maybe they give, maybe they read their Bible, maybe they pray. I mean, they can do all the right things, but they don't believe in Jesus. They haven't put their faith in Jesus. And therefore, they're not really a part of the church, global, universal. I'll get to that distinction in a moment. But they are a part of a church, a member of a local body of believers, even though they themselves do not believe. And again, the challenge with that is that we can't see the heart of people. So there's the visible church and the invisible church. There is also the universal church and the local church. Now, the universal church means the church everywhere. And I think we often forget that idea when we're talking about church. This is probably a little bit of a lessening of the reality of this, but you could almost think of a church as a franchise, okay? Because like there is McDonald's or Burger King or Wendy's or Pizza Hut or whatever your favorite food place might be. Some of those are independent restaurants. Um, and like a locally owned mom and pop restaurant, that is a locally owned restaurant. But then there are those which are franchised, and sometimes the corporation owns the restaurant, but sometimes a person like you and I could buy and say, I want to start a, let's just say, McDonald's at this particular location. So we buy the rights to do that. Now, we don't have to buy the rights necessarily to start a church, but there is the universal church in all churches of all places that are truly Bible believing, God honoring churches. And then there are local representations of that. And so we see, for instance, again, Paul saying to the church or to the saints in Ephesus, to the saints in Philippi, to the saints of Galatia, which was a region. And so he's talking about all of the churches in that area, if there were indeed multiple churches. We also see that in Revelation, for instance, when Jesus is talking, Revelation 2 and 3, where he says, to the angel of the church of Ephesus, to the angel of the church of Thyatira or Philadelphia or Sardis or whatever it is. And so in that, there is a local representation. So what we also need to realize is that when we talk about the body of Christ, we are talking about the church. But in 2019, we did a series, an 11-month series on the body of Christ, and we can really isolate that down to the local church, that we are all a part of the body of Christ, that we all need to do our part as the local body of believers here in Fairfax, and specifically in the context that we were talking in Fairfax Baptist Church. However, we can broaden that and say, well, maybe I'm the thumb in the part of the body of Fairfax Baptist Church, but in the larger context of the churches of Fairfax, maybe I am the knuckle on the thumb. Or maybe in the context of the overall universal church, the worldwide church, I'm just one part of the knuckle on the thumb. And again, I'm exaggerating the understanding here a little bit, but it's important to understand that when we talk about the church, we often get very myopic in our understanding to say, well, I go to my church. Well, none of these are my church, right? These are excuse me, God's church. It is the church that Jesus promised to build. And so as we think about that, that is an important distinction that we need to make, is that we are just one part of the universal church. So yes, there is the local church. Yes, the local church is a visible church, but I can't say beyond myself, honestly. First John chapter 5, verse 13, I believe it's 12 or 13, says that I write these things that you may know. I can know about me. I can see fruit in other people, but there's some fruit that looks good on the outside and is dead on the inside. There's some fruit that may not look as good on the inside or on the outside, but it tastes very good on the inside. So, we can't really know who really truly is a part of the real church, is truly saved, is truly holy. Again, we can have good clues about that. But this is the distinction between the local church and the universal church, between the visible church and the invisible church. But when we think about church in general, we have to understand that the church is also not just now. And of course, we know this. The apostles were really the initiators of the early church. Not that Jesus didn't initiate, didn't plan, is not continuing to plan. I don't mean that, but the apostles really got the ball rolling on the church. So when we think about the church, we also have to think about it all of time. That the church is for all time, from the beginning of when Jesus said, "I will build my church," and specifically, the church started to be built after his resurrection, in particular, which is, as I mentioned during my Easter Sunday message, one of the primary reasons for the resurrection is that he had not yet fulfilled his promise to build his church, and if he remained dead, he could not fulfill his promise to build the church. So all of those are kind of an understanding of the church, and I know that's brief and I know that's quick, but again, for the sake of time, I just needed to kind of clarify that up front. We could talk about these for days. Now, with that understanding in mind, let's go back to the phrase, I believe in the Holy Catholic Church. First off, in many times that you will see that written, you will see the C of church capitalized. And of course, when we title something like Fairfax Baptist Church, then the F of Fairfax, the B of Baptist, and the C of church is capitalized. But when we talk about the church, I'm going to church, normally that's in a lowercase c. But when you're thinking about the church, then the distinction is often made. I'm going to a church versus I'm going to the church, the global church. I'm a part of the global church. Then that is used with a capital C. So oftentimes in writing, you will see that C capitalized. So then we back up. Let me scoot back forward from the word Catholic to the word holy. As I just mentioned a moment ago, the word holy ones, the Greek for that, hagios is the Greek word for that. It means holy. And so the saints are the holy ones. So as we think about, I believe in the Holy Catholic Church, if we say Holy Church, what that statement is distinguishing is that I don't just believe in a church. I don't just believe in people gathering together, because in our day and age today, there is the church of Satan. And so we're not saying that I believe in church. We're saying I believe in the Holy Church, the church that God has ordained, that Jesus is building. That is the church in which I believe. So there is the holy aspect. Then we look at the word Catholic. Now, this was the essence of the question. And the person who asked me this question has a Catholic background, and so, but grew up in a Baptist realm. And why are you talking about the creed? There are other denominations that do the creed, etc. And so, most Baptists don't really talk about a creed. Well, I understand that, and I'm going to come back to that on Sunday and give more detail on that. But let me just say for now that many Baptists for years have said no creed but the Bible. That's a creed. Okay, so a creed is anything that we believe in, and the reason I'm teaching about the Apostles' Creed is because it really does have a nice summation or summary of the faith. It is not that we believe in the creed; it is that we believe in what the creed points to, and the creed points to the teachings and the sightings that the apostles had of Jesus. It represents the teachings of Jesus. It represents what they saw about Jesus. And therefore, rather than, hey, let's memorize the New Testament, how many of us have done that? Excuse me. We could memorize a creed and say, this pretty much sums up the New Testament. And therefore, that is why we're teaching, or why I've been teaching the creed over these past few months. So, the word Catholic. Now, we know that in today's day and age, and for the past decades and even centuries, when we hear the word Catholic, we think of the Roman Catholic Church. But realize the creed does not say, I believe in the Roman Catholic Church. It says, I believe in the Holy Catholic Church. Now, I'm not saying that there are not Catholics that are not faithful believers. I know some that are very faithful. I love having conversations with them. But what it does say with the C, in this case, it is lowercase. Just like the C of church is uppercase, in the writing of the Apostles' Creed, the C is lowercase. That word Catholic means whole, WHOLE, the entire. So going back to what I was saying a few moments ago, and this is why I had to clarify that, the church is both invisible and visible. So Catholic means the entirety of the church, the invisible church gathering together, represented by a visible congregation. It is both universal and local. The Catholic Church represents the universality of the church, the entire church. The church is not just the saints of today, the saints of yesterday, or the saints of tomorrow. It is the saints of all time. And so in the creed where it says, I believe in the Holy Catholic Church, I believe in the holy, whole church, which does not necessarily preclude Roman Catholics, but it does include all people who are believers for all time in all places under the lordship of Jesus Christ. And so, again, there have been attempts to change the word Catholic because of the confusion behind it. One of our church members, as we were going through this several weeks ago, texted me, and I clarified this yesterday just to make sure I had the wording right, because I had forgotten exactly what she said. But anyway, they recited the creed at a former church weekly. It was a weekly involvement, and they used the word apostolic. So when they said it, I believe in the Holy Apostolic Church, meaning churches that evolved from the apostles. And there's nothing wrong with that. In our world today, apostolic can also mean churches that send out, but that can also still include the Roman Catholics. Again, the Roman Catholics believe that the first pope was Peter. So it doesn't preclude them, but it brings some clarity and removes that word Catholic from those who are really challenged by that word. So for me, can I say I believe in the Holy Catholic Church? I believe in the saints of God, Catholic lowercase c, the whole church all time, of all places, everywhere. And certainly, I believe in the church. I hope that clarifies it for you today.